Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to week 2 of Sea-Bird University, week 2. This week is going to be taught by Dr. Kim Martini. Kim, if you could advance the slide, please.
Yes, I can.
So just a couple of basic things before we get started. As you've probably noticed, we're using Microsoft Teams Live as our platform for Sea-Bird University. You can see us, but we can't see you. And there's actually a slight delay between everything that we show and say before you actually see it. So while this is live, don't be surprised if we take about 20 seconds to get back to you. If you have questions, you can ask them in the chat. Alternatively, there's also a Q&A feature in Teams Live where you can answer questions there. For questions, I would recommend using the Q&A. We're monitoring that for the presentation. But if you just want to add some comments, feel free to use the chat feature. And if you need closed captioning, you can turn that on in the settings. Next slide, please. So here is where you can find everything. On the top right corner of your screen, you should be able to see the Q&A and then the settings to turn on closed captioning. The Q&A is this little question mark icon, and then the settings are the little gear icon where you can change your device settings and turn on closed captioning. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is week 2, and so today we'll be talking about how to deploy, recover, and get data with moored instruments, specifically featuring the SBE 37 MicroCAT CTD. On Thursday, we'll be talking about nitrate monitoring for users of the Suna V2 UV nitrate sensor. So that's a new topic that we haven't really ever covered in Sea-Bird University before. So please join us for that if you're interested in learning more about the Suna. Next slide. A little bit more information. The class is 1 hour and 30 minutes. We aim to have 1 hour of presentation with 30 minutes of Q&A. So feel free to add questions to that Q&A. We will be monitoring the chat, so we'll be answering a lot of those questions live as we go, but we'll definitely be talking about questions at the end of the session. If you have additional questions that you either forgot to ask here or didn't think of, you can always contact our technical support team. They are ready to answer any technical questions you have. And if you miss something, we will be posting recorded sessions on our website. We've already posted the videos from week 1, the first 2 videos featuring the 19 plus V2 CTD and the SBE 55 water sampler. So please go ahead and check that out. We'll put the link into the Q&A so you can see that. Next slide. And before we get started, we just want to introduce ourselves. My name is Greg Ketta. I am the Senior Content Development Manager here on Sea-Bird Scientific's marketing team. Prior to working on the marketing team, I worked in the technical support team and probably spoke to some of you over the phone, over email, if you ever contacted us with a technical support question. I've been at Sea-Bird Scientific for over 6 years now and have been using our equipment for over 11 years with a little over 150 days at sea in total. Aspect of the ocean that scares me most is big waves. I don't think any of the animals are that scary, but the physical forces out there terrify me. And today we will have Dr. Kim Martini teaching you about 37s. Kim, take it away. Kim, your microphone is muted.
I know, I just saw that. Thank you. So welcome, everyone, and thanks for being here today. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Kim Martini. I'm a senior oceanographer here. I've been at Sea-Bird for more than 5 years. I've used the products for over 17 years, and I've spent over 100 days at sea. I love waves. I was a wave researcher, and I did my PhD, so they don't scare me. But what does scare me is horseshoe crabs. So growing up with them on the East Coast, I don't know. I was really little, and I have a rational fear of them. I realize they're really awesome animals, but, you know, I just like to keep them a little bit further away. So this is a great intro here. We're going to be talking about MicroCATs today, and really one of the reasons I really like talking about this is because this is one of the first instruments I was actually ever using. One of the first ones I was ever using as a graduate student. So I was literally just handed a box of MicroCATs and told figure out what to do. So now I feel like I've gained a lot of information since there, and now I can actually teach it to you, so you can do. So you can kind of follow in the footsteps and have a little bit of guidance on how to do that. Okay, so we're just going to talk. The unit really is designed for new and beginning users, but do feel free to ask advanced questions in the chat. We do have a lot of them. We're going to do a brief intro to MORT instruments. We're going to do setting up the instruments, so how to change the batteries, how to do the battery endurance, talking about connectors and cable. We're also going to verify functionality, so what you make sure it works before you throw it in. And we're going to talk about deploying the instrument, and then also we're going to talk about recovery and storage and getting your data back. Okay, so introduction to MORT instruments. So the MicroCAT that I'm going to show you in a minute, what you usually do is we usually put them in the ocean, and they're usually static. So they're taking a bunch of data at one location for a long time. So this can be anywhere from a week, 6 months, or 2 years. And we've even had some that have managed to take data for 10 years. And so what you usually do is you put this on a mooring. So it's a line where there's a flotation at the surface and an anchor at the bottom, and you have rope, so either made of wire, Kevlar, whatever you're using, and you put lots of instruments at various discrete depths. So this is a little schematic of the tow array that's out in the the Western Pacific. And you can get this really beautiful data like you see on the left-hand side here. So you get this temperature, you get this salinity, and you can really see kind of things like rainfall or wind or storms, and you get this wonderful data. So I'm going to be talking a bunch about that. All right, so one thing we're going to talk about is the Sea-Bird MicroCATs. I'm actually going to switch my camera right now. I have a bunch of them on my desk that I will show you right now. So, okay, we're going to go to this, and then we're going to send this live. All right, so you should see my desk right here. So I actually have two kinds of MicroCATs. You might be familiar with these. You've seen these before. So they all kind of have the same sensors suite, the basic ones. So it's a temperature sensor here, which you can see the sting over here. And then you have a conductivity cell. And from this, you're going to actually measure, you put this into equation, and what you want to get is practical salinity here. So this is a MicroCAT that's called an SM, and this actually doesn't have a pump on it. So we recommend this using for really deep applications where you don't have a lot of changes. What we do have for really high dynamic areas is, this is our other MicroCAT. This is a Sea-Bird 37 SMP. And so in this case, the P stands for pump. And so it's the same kind of system, but it's set up a little bit differently. So here you have the thermistor, and here you have the conductivity cell. And we have them all connected with plumbing that goes down here. And so in here is a pump. So every time you want to take a sample, you get water sucked in here, it goes through the conductivity cell, and then it comes out this exhaust over here. And we really like this pumped solution because it has a lot of advantages. It matches up your temperature and conductivity, so you can get great data. And if you have rapidly changing conditions, this is really important. Also, if the mooring is in a highly dynamic area and it's moving around, you actually get way better data because your sample, you're really controlling the water inside here, and you get and it matches it up, and you get really nice non-spiky data. All right, so that's the introduction. I'm going to put this one away over here, and we're going to keep on going with this SMP over here, and we're going to talk about how to set this up for deployment. So the first step that you're going to want to do, so when we ship these, whether you get them from service or brand new, so also I want to note that these are serviceable instruments. So serviceable means that this instrument can last you for decades if you send it back to Sea-Bird for regular service. So it's a really great way to prolong the life, and you have a reusable product that you can always use. So when you get this back from service, it won't have the batteries. And the first step is you got to open it up and get the batteries. And what you do, and you do that from this end over here. All right, so this is the end cap here. I've already taken it off partially. You have, what you'll normally have is you'll have 2 screws that you'll have to remove to open it up, and then you'll have to release the end cap. So I did this morning, but it's still a little tight. It's a little bit hard to get off sometimes, and that's actually by design, because you do want it to actually close really securely when you're throwing it in a really deep ocean or it's getting banged around. These MicroCATs really live some of the hardest lives of our instruments just because of the way that they're deployed. And so everything is designed that they're extremely rugged. So if you do want to get it open, one thing you can do is you can get what's called a spanner wrench. I don't actually have the picture here, but it's in the PDF that we'll post afterwards. To open this up, you're going to twist this off, or what you can do as well is, what I like to do is I actually have a tiny screwdriver, and I put a little piece of tape on the end, and then I kind of get it in there to actually remove it. All right. Okay, so when you first remove this, let me get this a little closer here. You'll see that it's connected with a cable. So this is connecting your communication. So this is your cable connector here. I have the cap on it. You can't see the pins. I'll take that off later. And this is connected to a Molex connector, which is inside here. And I'm going to take this out. So you give it a little tug on the wires. And you can see I've taken it off here. And this is the connector that goes in. You can pull from here. It's pretty well. We designed it so it can take a lot of force. All right, so I'll put this on the side. Make sure you put this in a clean place. You see these O-rings here. This is actually your seal for not letting water into your instrument. So you want to make sure that you keep this nice and clean. This morning I did this after not having enough coffee, and I dropped it on my carpet. And I did have to clean it because I have a cat, and there was a lot of cat hair on that. I hope you don't have many cats in your lab either. All right, so once you open it up, that's where you get into your battery pack. So that's here. You can see it right here in the middle. You can't just pull this battery cap out. It's connected by a small screw a capture screw that actually keeps it in there. So this is to prevent the batteries from rolling around. So if you know anything about moorings, they undergo a lot of dynamic changes when they're oceans. So this thing will get bumped around a lot, and so you want to keep everything in place. So right now I'm taking my little Allen key out of my cup. I can talk about the cup. The cup is my favorite device for capturing things. So I just grab a cup from the galley often, and in there I keep my tools and any screws that I've taken out. This is a great way on a deck, on a boat, to keep everything contained. All right. Okay, so now I'm gonna I've unscrewed it, and I have my battery pack. All right, I've already installed the batteries here, but I am gonna show you a little bit, just some tricks about this battery pack, because it's a really handy little thing. All right, so you're going to be really tempted to grab it by this and pull it and be able to unscrew it. That is not what you unscrew it with. Just grab it around the side and unscrew it there. And you can actually see as I unscrew it, that doesn't actually change. You can pull it out and you see your batteries in here, and then when I go like this, you'll notice they don't fall out. So this is actually a design feature. We have 2 O-rings here and they're capturing it in. So if you do want to actually remove or replace these, you need to take these 2 O-rings, and I'm doing it right now, and you need to slide them up, and then your batteries will come right out. I'm not going to take them in and out here, but that's what we're going to do. Okay. So that is the battery pack. You put your batteries on, hopefully in the right direction. And then you put this back on as well. You screw this in. All right, pretty easy. And then you're going to put it back in, making sure that you align. So there is a little half moon shape right here. You'll see that there's I'll show you that there is a little location for the Molex connector, and you want to make sure you're able to see that. So once you do that, it'll actually get right in, and you can see, it's a little hard to see, but the Molex connector you can see right there. All right. Then I'm going to take back my little Allen key. I believe these are shipped with a little Allen key, so you have one. This is one. This is the ones I stole. No, I didn't steal. I got from service to show it. So you'll get something like this. I've marked mine, so no one can take mine. And then the last thing, okay, so then you want to put the connector. So this is a really important step right here. You want to make sure that you're checking your O-rings and you're making them dirty. You can see right here that I still have a little bit of cat fuzz on here. So my cat is very furry. All right, so what you do is you can take a Kim wipe. What I like to do is don't fold it up neatly. You want to crunch it in your hands. And then by that, you get little areas, pockets, where when you're picking up lint and stuff, it gets stuck in there. Go around and clean it up. I'm not doing a great cleaning, but this is kind of what you want to do, and you want to make sure you're getting all this. Any hair on here, so if you have any hair and you're going down to like 6,000 meters, that makes a potential pathway for water. So you want to be really, really careful on this one. This is only going in my basement, so it's not going to be under that much stress. All right. So now I'm going to put my Molex connector back in. All right. And then I'm going to put the end cap back on, and I want to make sure when I do this, I'm aligning this little screw right here. All right. And you give it a good push. So I'm going to take this. So again, everything is designed. Stepping off the screen, getting that big in. I just had to push really hard on the side, and it's back in. I do actually want to talk about some of the older, if you do need to open this up, you can see that on like particularly this one, it doesn't actually have that little screw there. What it does actually have is a little notch right here, and this notch is specially designed for a screwdriver to get it off. So some of these will have this system as well. Okay, so we've gotten the batteries in. So now it's ready to go, or at least talk to. And so the next thing I'm going to talk about is connecting this to your computer. And you're going to be connecting this using a RS-232 cable. So I've taken the little end cap here, and you can see that this one in particular has 4 pins. This is a connector that's designed for use in the ocean. And what we're going to do is that every single one of these comes with a communication cable. So this is what I have. Before I connect it, I do actually want to make sure that this is really nice and clean, and that you make sure that you don't have any gunk on it, or this looks like any corrosion. You can clean it off and use a little bit of the cable connector, which is DC4. You don't want to use anything with silicone because that will actually break down the rubber on this. But DC4 is what we recommend, and that's what you can use as well. And then also a really good tip that one of the cable connector manufacturers told me is that if you have a good way to clean it too, these are really small pins. If you have gone to any conferences, you may have gotten a reusable straw like I have, and then there's a tiny brush involved. And so you can use that to actually clean between the connectors. So that's a good tip there. All right, so I've talked about connectors. You want to make sure those all look good, and then you're going to actually want to connect this. So I am getting back out my cable. You will see that there is on this connector, there is 2 bumps, and you're going to want to align this with the largest pins, and that makes sure that everything is in the right space. You're going to want to put this in here. All right, and sometimes they're a little stubborn. Just make sure, make sure you're not bending the pins, and you'll see eventually that it'll just kind of pop on. All right. Then to connect it to your computer here, you're going to have, this is one of the cables as well. Sometimes you'll need, depending on what it is, you'll need a 6 to 4 pin connector here. But it should be, if you do need any extra guidance, it will be in the manual. And then what we do is we connect it to the serial to USB. And so then I have my serial ports over here, and I've connected it to my computer. Okay, so I'm actually going to switch my view now, and then I'm going to walk you through the steps now that I've connected it to my computer. All right, and bear with me while I get the right content here. If you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Let's see, I'm going to change my webcam here. And then I am going to, all right, I'm going to be sharing my screen here. All right. Okay. So if you can see my screen, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to open up CTerm v2. And so there's a couple of ways to access this. But really the quickest way is that I actually have shortcuts on my desktop. So I'm going to be opening up CTerm v2. You can also use CTerm, which is an older one, to talk to older instruments, and there's some reasons for that as well, just for downloading and converting data, particularly when they come off certain instruments, they're in an older format. So you will need to use CTerm to translate it into something that's usable, but this is the case here. Okay, so I'm going to open up CTerm v2, and when that happens, you will see this pop-up window, and it has all your instruments. So this is actually a launcher. So this is used to open up a bunch of programs that can talk to your instruments and interface with them. In this case, I'll be using the SBE 37 RS232, but you can see that there's other options as well. So depending on what kind of MicroCAT you have, we have a lot of different options, and they're actually all on the website if you do want to look at them. All right. Once I click on that, you'll see my CTerm comes up. Pretty slowly. Okay. So here you go. So you can see CTerm here on my computer. And I know right now that this instrument has been connected to this computer. And I know that because right now in this area that's right in the middle of my screen, it's just spit out a lot of information. So that's the information as well. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try to, you're going to press enter. And you want to figure out the status of the instrument. So there's actually two ways to do this. The one you can do is press on. So up here on the left-hand side, you see the command, and we can click on this little plus down here, and then we can display status and configuration parameters. And so this is the command DS, and it tells you what this is here, and then you can execute it. And so this is just a terminal that will send this to the instrument to tell you. So this is your first step. So you want to execute it, and you press DS. And now what you can see here is that you can see that there is a bunch of information. So I'm going to highlight it right here. All right, but I'm going to unhighlight. And there's a lot of really useful information for you here. It tells you what firmware we're using. So this is version 4.1. It tells you what date it thinks it is. It tells you the serial number. It also tells you the battery life, the lithium life, and then the sample number, and then how many is free. It tells you whether or not it's logging and your sample interval, and it gives you kind of all the settings that are as well. So we're going to go into that later and do that. The first thing that you're going to do, is I did talk about, was actually going through the date and time. So you do want to verify this. Actually, I'm sorry, I'll step back a minute. There's actually another way that you don't actually have to always go to this menu as well. If you go in the bottom and you type DS, it will do the same things. So if you do this a lot, you might start memorizing a lot of the commands, and then you can actually just do it pretty fast through this as well. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, yeah.
Can you maximize your CTerm screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
How's that?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, one thing I can do as well. Okay, so we're going to want to, let's see. So one thing you can do is you want to set the time. So we have two options here. You could either go up to this menu up here and set the local time. The local time is the time that's on your computer. So since my clock is in Seattle, it will set it to the local time, or you can set it to UTC time, depending on where you are. So it will know automatically to do that. I do recommend using UTC time. You can always set to local time later. It just really like helps with a lot of confusion. But you know, sometimes you just want to do the local time and as well. And also it depends on also what your local time is on your, if you're on a ship, and particularly if you're on a large ship and you've been out for a while, double check that, because it may either be set to where you left from port, or it might be set to, you know, something different that it doesn't really make a lot of sense for what you're looking at. So I do recommend always UTC time. Okay, so it asks you to send command to set date and time to UTC, so I'll set yes. And then it's executed, and you can see that right down here, there's a little bit of to tell you that as well. All right, the next part is that you want to do, this is kind of verifying whether it works. You want to make sure everything's set up right. So the next thing is you want to check your calibrations. That actually is something you can do over here. You can go up here for status and display your calibration coefficients. When you press it, it'll tell you that it's the command DC. And it'll say here, this is the command in the bottom that you're going to do. So this is execute, and it'll give you your calibrations. So I will be, this instrument has been in my office for 3 years now, so it has not been calibrated since 2018. But it's a good check, particularly when you get these back, or if you're using, particularly if you're using this in a group with a lot of people. So a lot of people have like common MicroCATs that you use. It's good to double check this. And so the way that you do this is, I'll scroll this back up and I'll zoom back out, is I actually have my, oh, I don't know where they went. I forgot, sorry, I have my calibration sheets, but I guess I had uploaded them last night. But if you look on the calibration sheets, you'll get it as a PDF, and you will be able to compare that. So these do actually match my calibration sheet. I'm sorry, I don't actually have it right here. Let me just check if it's in this folder. Nope, okay. Okay, all right, so you've checked your calibration coefficients here. And then the next thing is you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check the zero conductivity frequency. So the zero conductivity frequency only applies if you have an instrument that has a pump. And so what this does is this is actually a stopgap designed so that your pump doesn't actually turn on in air. So the pumps on MicroCATs, they're water lubricated. You can run them for a short time in air, but if you say they automatically, if you set the on time incorrectly or something happens and it turns on, you don't want to have it running for like an hour, because it will burn out the motor because it's not being lubricated. It's just working really, really hard. So the way that we prevent this, that we can do this, is that you actually set what's called the minimum conductivity frequency. So in air, you have a conductivity frequency that's just set. It's the background basics of your electronics, and then when you put it in the water, it'll be higher. And so the whole idea is you're using the frequency, so whether your conductivity cell is filled with water, that is how you figure out whether to turn on the pump or not. And you do this, all right, so here, I'll click my DS command again, and I can see that my minimum conductivity frequency here is 3,000. So I don't actually have the number. I'm sorry, I don't know where I would take this number from the calibration sheet, and since I know I'm deploying this in saltwater, I set this to whatever I see on my calibration sheet. So that's at the salinity is 0. It'll have a frequency on there, and I'll set it to plus 500. All right, that's in saltwater. If I was doing it in freshwater, you don't have such a big change in conductivity. It would be what you see on your calibration sheet plus 5. All right, and you can do this here in general. Sorry, I have to find the actual one. All right. So yeah, so if you're like me and that you don't use this, so for me, I don't actually use these for over a year. So sometimes I remember some of them and I forget some of them. So this is actually one of them. Okay, hold on. Greg, do you remember which one it is off the top of your head? I'm sorry.
I don't. I'm actually trying to find your calibration sheets right now. Can you tell me the serial number of this MicroCAT?
Yeah, I can tell you because it's right here. 15732.
15732. Thank you. It's a little too small for me to see. And sorry, what are you looking for?
The minimum conductivity frequency.
I don't know where to find that in the commands, but if you want to type the command in the terminal, it is MINCOND FREQ equals, and then whatever value you want to put in there.
Okay, hold on. I just accidentally closed this. There it is. Sorry. Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay. All right, so I'm going to set it here, min conduct frequency. I'm just going to say that it equals 3,000 plus 500. So if that was it on the chart, it would be, and I'll grab this for actually, did I get that right, Greg?
Sorry, it's kind of, the screen is a little bit small for me.
Sorry, let me do this. All right, is this better?
Oh yeah, so much better. MINCOND FREQ. Yeah, try that again. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll find the correct command for you.
All right, I'm gonna pause here, and then I'll go over it at the end in the Q&A so we can make sure we get through all the material. Apologies on that one. All right, turn my magnifier off. Okay. Okay. And then the last thing you want to do is you do actually want to just take some data. So you want to make sure it makes a little bit of sense here. And so you can go, you can take a sample here. So pulled sampling, and you can do it. It's a TS command is really common. And it takes you, I don't know if you could hear that, but the motor just went on for 1 minute. And it tells you some information here. So this is your temperature, this is your conductivity, and then here is your conductivity as another variable as well. And so you can look at this against your in your manual. So it's actually all in the slides, so you'll be able to reference this. But this is a 20C, so this actually makes sense. And your conductivity is close to 0 because you're in air, and that also makes sense. And so this actually looks like it's functioning quite well. Okay, so we've taken some data. One thing we do need to figure out now, so we've verified whether this works. The next step in this as well is that we're going to, let's see, bring up my slide. Okay, the next step in this here is I'm going to go through and we're going to go back. We're going to jump ahead. So everything is in the slide deck. So everything I've covered is a lot more detail to this. But the next thing we really want to talk about is actually battery endurance and preparing for deployment here. So I'm going to go back. Okay. So when you're preparing for your deployment, you really have to know exactly what you're doing. It's really a compromise between sampling, frequency, memory, and power. So you only have a limited amount of everything. And so we're going to kind of go over how to set up your prepare instrument for a field deployment using this. And one thing I do want to I'll go over at the end, but deployment checklists are great ways to capture all the steps. So actually physically writing down what you've done is a really nice way to do that. And it's a really good way, particularly if you have a lot of them, is a good way to get that done. Okay, so what you need to know about battery endurance, there's a lot here, but the operating current is the electrical current the instrument needs to work. And any additional current that any BGC sensors, some of these have oxygen on them and pump require. There's also a quiescent current. So this instrument, when it's not sampling, it is consuming a tiny bit of power. And this is with all instruments, just to make sure that you can wake it up. So really understanding the battery endurance is really understanding, the operating current, what your pump setting are, and then the battery capacity. But we actually made this pretty easy. You don't actually have to do this yourself. So when I first started, we didn't actually have this. You just had to actually do the math yourself. I had a wonderful Excel spreadsheet. But now we actually have a battery endurance calculator to do that, and I will actually walk you through that. One thing to know is that your battery capacity depends on your ambient temperature. So if the battery power is produced via chemical reactions, and if it's low temperatures, it proceeds more slowly, and then you just need to use more battery life. Also, battery shelf life depends on your storage treatment. So that's why they say put your batteries in the freezer. That's a great place to keep them. Use a lot less batteries over time if you keep them. They store a lot better. And really one important thing here is when in doubt, you have to change your batteries out. If you don't know how old they are or how much of their new batteries are way cheaper than another deployment. And so we always recommend that. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit because we use two kinds of batteries here. I did show lithium and I did show alkaline. So I actually have the two. This is a kind of a brief description of what they are. Again, for alkaline, lower temperature means less capacity. Alkaline batteries are great because as you have them with time, you can see that their voltage starts to decrease. So if you know what the initial battery life is, then you can determine kind of how old it is and to replace. That makes it easy to tell. So you can just use a multimeter for that. Lithium is not so. It's really hard to actually tell when a lithium battery is spent, and it's because of these curves here. You can see that over time that you pretty much have a pretty constant voltage until all the way at the end. And so the voltage isn't actually a good indicator of how spent the battery is. So if you do have lithiums and you don't know how old they are, do just replace them. The cost is so much less than actually all the time it took you to get that instrument in the water and all the infrastructure to do that. And only because it just really drops dramatically after that. Okay, memory capacity. I'll talk a little bit about this. For the newer SBE 37s, you have about 8 megabyte standards. And what happens is it records a little bit for each. So if you have temperature and conductivity and pressure and the dissolved oxygen, date and time, each one is more bytes. But really with the newer 37s, you can get over 500,000 samples. So that's actually a lot of samples. So typically if you have a newer MicroCAT, you're not going to be memory limited. If you do have an older one, so we do see them in service, often we do see 20-year-old ones, they just have an older memory, they don't have as much space, so you will have to be a little bit more mindful. And the battery endurance calculator will do that for you, but just so you know, you can take more samples with the newer one. And typically right now, if you have a newer one, memory is not your limiting factor. It's really battery life. Okay. So preparing for deployments with software, you're going to use the battery endurance calculator to determine battery life and sampling frequency. All right, so that's what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to set up a pretend deployment. So I call this basement experiment because I'm in my basement, basement X. All right, so what I can do is I've again made a link on my desktop, but you can always search for it here. So deployment endurance calculator. All right, so it's called. Walk you through that. All right, I've opened up my app. I'm going to zoom in so we can all see. All right. Oop. Oh, here we go. All right. Okay. So in this case, we have a lot of options. You can do whatever you want with this. But in this case, we have what I have on my desk and that I'm working on with the SBE 37 with an integral pump. All right. It's going to ask me how I'm going to talk to it, whether it's inductive modem, RS-485 or RS-232. So this is RS-232 is the serial cable. Inductive modem uses more energy because you're talking back and forth, which is what takes that into consideration. And then it asks you for your firmware. So if you're using, it's typically 4.0 and higher if you're using something that's built in the last 5 years. Okay, in this case, it asks your pressure sensor type. Mine doesn't actually have one, so I'm going to press none, but if you do, there's only one choice. It's a strain gauge, and it uses the same amount of power every time. So even it doesn't matter what depth rating you have it for, it will be the same. Okay, and then you're going to do your sampling interval. So in this case, we're doing autonomous sampling. So autonomous sampling means that your instrument is, you're not talking to it, you're closing it up and you're throwing it in the ocean and you're not going to talk to it. So it's going to figure out how to sample at a regular interval by itself. And so in this case, we can do it now for, let's see, I'll do it for 60 seconds. That's every minute to tell you how long it will go. If you want to do pulled sampling, that means that you've actually connected to the instrument and you're talking to it and you say, okay, I'm going to tell you to take a sample and then I'll turn it off. This is often the case if you have it with a surface buoy that you're trying to get real-time data. And you can also transmit real-time. So if you're going to do that, you would click on that as well. Okay, and you can also do transmit real-time with autonomous sampling as well. All right. It asks you what your battery type is. For this particular instrument, you only have a choice of lithium, so that's what you're going to do. And then it tells you and then here it tells you what it is. You can output this information in a text editor if you'd like, but here is the information that you want. It tells you everything about there, what your battery capacity is, and your battery endurance. So it's 356 days, which is almost a year. So that's a lot of sampling. You can sample every single minute for 356 days. You will actually, and this is I would like to note too, that this is actually a conservative estimate, so it will probably last longer. People typically do sampling. We've seen instruments come back where they've said, okay, I'm going to set it out for 2 years. And then because of, so this was a case, it was actually in the Antarctica, when they went to first go retrieve the instrument after 2 years, they couldn't get the mooring back. So they just left it there and said, okay, when we actually have a chance to get it, we'll get it. So that was 10 years later. So they got it for over a decade. It ran for over a decade. So these are really conservative estimates. I wouldn't push it that far because you don't want to really, you do want to make sure that you're getting all your data, because that would be horrible to not get all the data. But this gives you a really good conservative estimate on all the actual things in the ocean. Okay. So I'm going to press exit here. I can save this. I can view it in a text editor if I'd like, and then save it out. So that's a good way to save things. Okay. And I am going to go, all right, zoom out again. Okay. So I'll go back to my CTerm here. All right. Open my window back up. Okay. So I've talked to it a little bit. I have figured out what my deployment is. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I am going to want to clear the memory. So the way the memory works is that it will just keep on, if you have samples on there, it will just keep on adding samples to the end, all right, of what you've last taken. And then once you run out of memory, it will just stop storing the data. So you always want to clear your data ahead of time, unless you kind of know how much data you have and you've done all that calculation, but it's a good practice just to clear out your data and start from fresh and then have a new data file. So this one is, you're going to do init logging for this. So that's going to, okay. All right. So this command, let me zoom in here so you can actually see. Okay. So I'm writing init logging in here. So it asks me to do it twice because it wants to make sure that you are not doing it. So you've cleared out the memory, all right? And so you can see up top, it says sample number last time I hit this. And let's see if we've actually, you can check with the DS command going through. Sorry, I didn't realize it would be quite so back and forth when it did this in the magnifying glass. But the sample number here is now 0, and you have all your samples. So I only took 7 samples since last time I cleared out this as well. You'll want to do things like do TX real time equals no. Oh. Okay. So you don't want to output anything in real time. It'll tell you that. And then the last thing you want to do is you can see this. So you want to decide, do I want to start sampling now or do I want to start sampling later? And I will show you how to do this with using here. Okay. So you can do that, and I'm going to just close these up kind of so you get a good idea of where we're at here. So this is for autonomous sampling. So we're just going to set this up. So set it and forget it. That's what we're doing here. We're going to, you can either have two choices. You can start logging now. So if I was just like ready to throw this in the water and just do this, this is great for if you're doing field tests and stuff, you can start logging now. But sometimes you want to start, most of the time you're going to want to set delays. And you're going to want to press here. And what you can see, so this actually changes up this menu a little bit here. Once you click on this, you'll get that the start date and time, that's actually the command, but you're going to need the argument here. And so it's month, day, year, hour, minute, seconds. In the United States here, it's Halloween. So I'm going to set it for 10/31/2021 and then 000000. So midnight, all right, on Halloween. I'm going to press execute and it'll do it. The other way I could do it, if I wanted to, I could type this exact command in there. So that will also work. Okay, so I've set this to start now and start later. And then, okay, and then that should be it, right? Did I skip a step here, Greg? I did init logging, yeah. Okay.
Nope, looks good to me.
All right.
Said start later.
Yeah. Start. All right, there we go. Okay, so start logging in this, and I can press my DS command. And then I'm going to press, and then I'm just going to put it back into, so it's not logging. It's waiting to start on Halloween. I'm going to have to remember this because otherwise it's going to start in my basement to turn it off later. And you press QS and you go to sleep. So now QS puts it to a quiescent state, and it is now ready to be deployed. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So we are ready to go. I think just the one thing I do want to cover is actually preparing your instrument for, defend your instrument for biofouling. If you've ever thrown something in the coastal ocean, you know that, oops, I can do this. All right, you know that after some period of time, it's going to look like this because in particular, it's just really, biology just grows everywhere. You can sometimes correct for it, but the best practice really is just to avoid that. And so we have a couple of mitigation strategies. One thing we ask you not to do is don't use anti-fouling paint. We do get it back. If you do it, you have to clean it back off before you send it back to us for any service or calibrations, because it does actually, it can contaminate our calibration baths, and we have technicians that use it, so we don't want to get that. It's not good. It's not good to do that. Okay. If there's too much paint, if there is a little bit of paint, sometimes we'll charge you to remove it. If there's too much, we're just going to send it right back to you. Okay, our strategy for this is actually using an anti-foulant device. These are tiny little pucks. They are very, very precise in that they are designed to prevent biofouling only in the region that counts. So in this case, this is the conductivity cell. Use typically 2 within the plumbing. You'll see I don't have any, I had a baggie, but I don't have it with me. You can get them if you want to replace them. But it does only keep everything clean around this. So you'll see that this is a picture of one of our sensors. It took perfectly good data because it had those 2 antifoulants. Everything around the inlet for the conductivity was clean, and still, but you still have a lot of biofouling is there. The other thing that we do recommend is that you actually you wrap it in either electrical tape or copper tape is more effective, but just regular old black tape also works. And that makes the biofouling a lot easier because you just unwrap it after you're done. And you can also gain additional protection by adding a copper tube. And then if you're kind of wrapping it, sometimes you also take this on or off. You just want to make sure that you are putting your screws in correctly. So this is you have two screws, so a big and a small screw. The big screw here goes through the housing to the end cap, and the little screw just goes in the end cap. So this is helping keep this all together here. So the last thing is that you're going to want to put it in the water. There was a picture before, you're going to want to have it. So I have the MicroCAT. So you're going to want to put it so that the pump end is up high. You'll see that there's actually a little hole on top, and that helps expel any air bubbles. For deep moorings, if you're greater than 10 meters, pressure will expel any air bubbles. It'll just get it out. If you have shallow mooring, you'll want it like less than 10 meters. You're going to want to fill the plumbing with DI water prior to deployment. If there's no chance of freezing. If there is, you're going to do the second thing. If it's a shallow deployment and it's too cold, you're just going to take the instrument, you're going to move it underwater to shake the air out, and you're going to see the bubbles coming out of the bleed hole. Okay. And then the last thing I talked about was this deployment checklist. I've used these a lot in my own work. It's just a really good way to make sure you do everything. When you're at sea, I don't know about you, but I'm never feeling my best. I'm not sleeping, and so there's a lot of things going on. So just make it easier for yourself. Have something and then make sure you're checking everything. And this is just one example, but there's a lot of different ways depending on what your deployment is to get done. Okay, now that you've deployed, you have to wait. So however that long is, it's either 3 months, a year, 10 years, depending on your deployment, and you're getting your instrument back. So the first thing you want to do when you get it back is you want to rinse your equipment thoroughly with fresh water. You want to make sure all the salt is off. Do that on a boat. You do want to remove any fouling from the pressure sensor port if you do have it, just to make sure it's easiest to get it off there. If you do want to post-calibrate sensors, do not rinse the sensors themselves. So one thing that we talk about is never, ever, ever, ever put like a hose or anything into the plumbing to clean it out. The electronics are delicate in there. We do have ways to clean it using gentle cleaning methods, but you don't want to actually do that. And if you do want to clean the outside of your instrument, you're going to want to take a loop of Tygon and help it to protect the sensors. If you just want to store the instruments and you don't want to send it back in, you can clean the outside, you can rinse and store the conductivity. It's described in application note 2D. And then you want to rinse and store the SBE 63 dissolved oxygen sensors as described in the manual. I do actually want to take a brief pause to talk about safety precautions and flooded instruments. It does happen. While instrument flooding is rare, it does happen. I actually have gotten back flooded instruments because the entire mooring was picked up by a trawler and it ended up on a beach being slammed against the rocks. But if it flooded at deep depth, the instrument can be under extreme pressure. And so if you actually undo, it looks okay, but it probably isn't. If you suspect it has flooded, just point the end caps away from people. There have been stories of them popping off and really causing extreme damage to boats. So we want to make sure. Okay. If it's applicable, if you don't know, you can loosen the end cap hardware a little bit. If the end cap follows the hardware out, the instrument might be under pressure. So if it starts expanding, if you know it's not, if you're really unclear. If you do think it is flooded, one of the best ways to do that is you can take the connector. So this is actually from a different instrument, but you can see it's the same idea. Here we have a whole bunch of connectors. You can take a giant wrench. So your instrument's flooded, so don't worry about damaging it, but you do want to actually, this is all for safety. You want to basically turn the connector. It'll break the O-ring seal and allow the instrument to vent. And you might hear signs of internal pressure, hissing, and leak water. Again, like I said, this doesn't happen often, but it's really good to keep in mind, particularly if you're working with instruments at really high pressures. Okay, if you do have one flooded, you pour out any water inside the housing, remove any of the installed batteries, and you can actually return the instrument to Sea-Bird for evaluation. We will actually see if we can get the data off of it for you. Okay, so the next step is the workflow for internally recording instruments. You're going to recover your instrument here, which I showed you. This is Greg. He's going to upload your data to your computer, or you're going to do it yourself, so we don't have to rely on Greg. And then you can convert it to a human or machine readable software. Okay, so again, we're going to use CTerm v2 in this case. Okay, I'm getting, okay. So in this case, so here we go. So I'm still connected to my instrument. Let's just assume I've reconnected it. I can press DS, it wakes up. I'm going to press stop, and it stopped logging here. All right, you can find that in the left-hand column here as well, sorry. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see that all I did was I typed stop, and then I stopped logging. Now what I'm gonna wanna do is I'm gonna wanna upload my data. All right, let me zoom out. It's doing things and I can't see. Okay, so now it's talking to it. It's getting some information. Let's make sure I don't have another window up. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Oh, it didn't take any data. Sorry. I was like, why isn't it doing this? Because I actually set it to do on Halloween. So if you do this, it's going to ask you where to save this. Let me just bring up the slide really fast. Okay. So if you want to download internally recorded data, when you do that, it's going to spit out that information, and then you're going to get this pop-up window here. So you choose the upload format. Text is slower, but it's more robust. Binary is faster, and then converts it into an ASCII file. You don't really have to change any of this. This is fine. You want to change. Typically, you just want to upload all your data as a single file, and then you're going to save down here where you're going to choose where you want to save your uploaded data, and then you're going to click upload. All right. So when it does this, it's going to save a whole bunch of files. So the first one is a .xml file. So that's actually how you're just uploading the raw data. The data is then converted to a data file and a configuration file. So the raw data is in the .hex, and the .xml con is the configuration data. And so the raw data is just the raw frequency output from your temperature, your conductivity, and your pressure sensor. And the XML con file takes the calibration data, and it's what the software is going to use and what the instrument uses to convert that into real numbers, human readable numbers like temperature, conductivity, or practical salinity. All right, these all three will have the same name, so that's really easy, keeps it together, and then it's really easy to use. All right, so these are just some examples of what they look like. Typically, if you then what you're gonna next want to convert your uploaded data to human readable data. So after you do this, you're going to get a pop-up window that says convert the uploaded .hex file to a .cnv file, and you want to launch the data conversion. So if you press yes, it's going to launch it. If you just downloaded the data and maybe you had a cup of coffee and you're coming back to it, you can also open up Sea-Bird Data Processing and go in the menu, and it will take you to the same exact thing. All right, so that's data conversion. Okay, so I'm going to make this small. I'm going to close CTerm because I am done with it. Let's see. All right. All right. So I have SBE Data Processing. So I had this link on my desktop, and I'm going to go to data conversion like I just talked about. And this window is going to come up. All right. All right. Oh. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of different things going on here in this menu. So here we have a program setup file. This is actually a file where I've saved all of my old configuration. So I've actually already processed this file, but I actually set everything that I'm going to do from here forward is actually saved in this .psa file. So this is really useful if you're doing a lot of different instruments, or you're using batch processing, which I'm not going to go into here, but there is a module in that. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to want to select your instrument configuration file. So that's your xml.con. All right, it's opened up a window here, and I double click on it, and it should choose it. Then I'm going to want to choose my input file. So this is the .hex file. You'll see it's pretty smart. It goes to the same folder that you just went to, which is your XML, and it's your .hex file. And then you want to save it to your output directory. It'll output the file to this name, which is really the same, and then you can append the name. So I like to append it with my initials so I know that I am the one that processed it. But it can be anyone you want. Okay, the next thing you want to do is set up your data. You're going to want to process scans to the end of the file. You just want to start from 0. There's typically nothing unless it's, you can take that out in post-processing. You're going to want to do an ASCII output for here, and you're going to convert the data. So in this case, it's asked for the upcast and downcast. Always do it upcast and downcast for this, for more data. And what you're going to do is create a converted data file. The next step is you're going to want to choose what you output on that. Okay, so I've actually made some choices already. So one thing that I want to do, because I know this is a MicroCAT, I want the temperature, I want the conductivity, I want pressure, and I want to calculate salinity from that, all right? So this is actually a calculation here, and I want to do the time. But I have a lot of other choices. I could do sound velocity if I wanted to, so I can have a lot of different choices, meters per second. So when I double click on it, you'll see it'll automatically populate it. I could do scan count as well. I can just use this button too. So there's a couple different ways to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to start my process. Okay. Oh, and you can do like the source for the start time. So it's either the instrument's timestamp or the upload time, depending on what you want. Okay. So I start the process. You can see I've already done this. So it asks me if I want to overwrite it, and I'm going to say yes. I'm okay with that, and then it processes it, and then we're done. All right. So now you have this data. Yes, I do want to save it. So now I can save this again. Zoom out again. Okay, so now I have this data. So this is my file folder where I store everything. So I have a hex file, I have an XML file, I have an XML con, and now I have this .cnv file. And I can open this up in any notepad, and now I can see that I have this great data file with, I'm going to scroll down. So there's all this information is in there. So you have it all in one place. And then I have my data. So I have temperature, I have conductivity, I have pressure, I have all this data that I can use. But one thing is there's a lot of things you can do with this data. So you can output it to like GitHub, you can do it in MATLAB, you can do it in Python, you can do it in R, there's a lot of different data processing modules. I'll kind of go over that at the end to do this. But one thing that I like to do is that part of this Sea-Bird data processing is that if you open it up and you have cplot. So if you're at sea and you want to look at this data, we have a little widget that will help you do that. And so I've already set this up already. I used a program setup file, and this will just help you plot it. I have my input directory here, which is the file, the .cnv that I just made. I'm gonna set up a plot that's a single X with multiple Y, so that's time. And I have my X-axis here, which is the scan count, and then my Y-axis, which is the temperature. I can also do other things like salinity. I'm not going to actually plot it because I just did this in air, so it doesn't actually make any sense and it's confusing. But once you've actually set all this up, you press start process, and it makes a really nice little plot for you. This is a really good way to just check to make sure everything kind of worked okay. And if you really want to look at a first cut of data, just using some pre-software, you can make this whatever colors you want. I like to use Comic Sans and hot pink, so everyone knows that it is me. And you can zoom in nicely, and you can also, so you can see that, so this isn't real ocean data. This is the temperature variations in my office because I left this on for over a year in my office by accident. You can see that, and then you can output it. You can save it to a file if you want to save it to a JPEG. Right, it'll go there. Okay. So this is the last bit here. Okay, I'm going to go back. I just kind of have a couple of last minute tips here. We're going to go scroll down through here. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we've gone through all of this. I do want to leave, actually, we do actually have, if you do want to store your instrument after this, you just want to make sure you want to clean the outside, you want to clean the sensors, and you just want to send it, if you do want to do post-deployment calibration, you can send it to Sea-Bird. if you do want to clean the outside, if you've used tape, you just peel it off, really easy. If you have really stubborn biofouling, you can remove it with a plastic scraper, so like a paint scraper. Also, if you have really, really stubborn biofouling and you haven't wrapped it in tape, I think if you probably have done this once before, you're going to wrap it in tape next time. But you can wrap the instrument in rags soaked with vinegar for 1 to 2 hours, and that can make the biofouling removal easier. So it breaks down all the connections between there. Some people like to use a pressure washer. It's not recommended because it can damage the sensors, particularly the conductivity cells. I mean, and so it's if you do that, so we don't recommend it, but people do it. If you're doing any of this cleaning too, we do recommend that you sort of plug up the plumbing ends or wrap a piece of Tygon tubing or something, or have a little plug, so you just don't get any of the guck, because we've spent all this biofouling mitigation to keep the inside of the sensors clean, and you don't want to get it inside. We could do routine cleaning of the conductivity cells. It's an application note 2D. You can get from us, it's like a syringe, you can see it there, I have one here, and you can gently flush through it. One thing we do say is never, ever, ever, ever run a brush through the cell to clean it. You can disturb the electrodes and affect your calibration. Okay, all right, so additional resources. I'm actually gonna close this down here. Okay, and I'm going to go, so we have a lot of additional resources for you on the web. So this is kind of what I talked about here. If you want to get information about any of your sensors, let me maximize this, and then I will, there we go. All right. See this? Okay. If you want, we have a model list here, and you can click on that, and that will bring you to any information on any of these instruments. Once you go to one of these pages right here, so I will go to the 37 SMP, you'll see there's a lot of information. If you need more information, all the information that I've covered here is based in a bunch of application notes and the manuals, and they can be found on the Downloads tab here. We have data sheets, we have manuals, we have app notes here, so CTD basics, and then we also have all the manuals down here. If you want any particular application notes, another thing you can do is you can go to support and find application notes. We also have technical papers as well. So that is all I wanted to share with you for today. So I will leave it to Greg to go to the next step.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
I bet we have questions. I don't see them, so.
Yeah, currently no questions in the Q&A. If you wanted to share, I just sent you a PDF of the conductivity calibration certificate for your MicroCAT. And then within the Q&A, I published some information on the minimum conductivity frequency. So let's see, I sent that PDF to you via Microsoft Teams. So if you wanted to pull that up, you know what? I can pull that up. What am I?
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay, so Kim was talking about the minimum conductivity frequency. And so that is the intelligent control to prevent your pump from turning on inadvertently when your sensor is in air. So what we're doing here is we're taking this 0 conductivity frequency from the calibration certificate. So Kim's 37 is serial number 15732. I pulled this from our database. This is also a file that we send to you as some of the documents that you receive with your instrument when you first purchase it from Sea-Bird, or if you get it back from service and it's been recalibrated, you will get a PDF document that looks exactly like this. Within this, the first line here is your 0 conductivity frequency. This means that at 22 degrees C in air, so this is not in one of our calibration baths, this is what your instrument is outputting, what your conductivity sensor is outputting. The raw value that when you take this, you put it through this formula right here, it'll say this is 0 conductivity. There's a couple of things you can do with this. First of all, for the minimum conductivity frequency that Kim was talking about, the pump control, for freshwater applications, you can take this and set your minimum conductivity frequency to 0 plus 5. So in this case, it would be 2806 hertz. What that does is when your 37 enters, say, a lake, a fresh body of water, your conductivity frequency is going to jump up by a little bit. That fresh water does have some conductivity. And then it's going to be higher than 2806. And then your pump is going to say, okay, we've met the minimum conductivity frequency threshold for pump to turn on. And then it's going to be able to turn on once you start logging some data. For seawater applications, we recommend adding 500 hertz to this. So that would be what, 3,301 hertz. So when your 37 enters seawater, that's going to jump up by quite a bit more because it's salt water, higher conductivity. And then your pump is going to know, yep, I am safe to turn on. I'm not in air. I'm not going to burn myself out. What you can also do with the 0 conductivity frequency is just give yourself a quick sanity check on whether or not you need to clean your instrument. If your 37 is dirty, or I guess if the conductivity cell in your 37 is dirty, you can log some data in air and configure your 37 to output this raw conductivity value. I believe that's output format 1, maybe. Kim, maybe you could verify that for me. And if you just send the TS command, take sample, that's going to output a string of data from your 37. And if it's in the right output format, one of those data values will be your conductivity frequency. If you do that, then it should match this within a few tenths of a hertz. If it's off by a full integer value, chances are you need to clean your conductivity cell. If it's off by several values, say it's off by 20 hertz or something, there's a good chance that your conductivity cell is damaged. I would recommend first cleaning it with the Triton X or some kind of surfactant solution. As outlined in application note 2D, Kim touched on that in the presentation. And then check it again. If it's closer to this, try cleaning it again. If it's still off by several hertz, you probably need to send your instrument back to Sea-Bird.
Yeah, Greg, you're going to want to send your output format to 3, so that's the decimal data for that as well. And then also, the command is min cond freq. The reason why I didn't accept mine is because I code a lot and I put spaces in between, so no spaces in there. So if you find you're getting a lot of errors and you think you got it right, make sure you don't actually have any spaces in there.
Okay, so that's minimum conductivity frequency.
Do we have any? Oh, we have another question.
Yep, we have one question. Header name is not available in the notepad file after data conversion. Kim, can you show the .cnv file that you created?
Yes, I can. Hold on, let me grab it up here. Okay. All right, and then let me switch to and I'm gonna share content. Hold on. My desktop here. Okay. Okay, and so the question here is the header name is not available in the notepad file after data conversion. Is that, can you see the header name? Oh, it is. So the header name, so the way that this actually outputs, I'm sorry, if you're, so I think I interpret this correctly, please let us know if I'm wrong, is the header for each of these files here. So if I scroll down, sorry, I'm gonna zoom in again so we can see here. Okay, you can see at the end of the header name that each of these columns doesn't have a name immediately outputted on top. So it does not, but it actually is a little bit higher up. And so I'll have to scroll up. So if you scroll up a little bit, you will see that when we start the header, so this is actually where the header it starts. This is everything after the hash is what's created by the actual Sea-Bird software program. And you can see that each column has, excuse me, the temperature, conductivity, pressure, and this tells you it here. And this can be parsed to tell you what that is as well. So that's where you will actually find that. All right. I hope that answered your question. Do we have any more questions? You try to stump us too.
If we don't have any more questions, Kim, I was thinking it could be handy to show the ASCII out module in data processing. I can show that right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, so maybe this is one of the last things that we do here. Please feel free to add questions, but so I added in the chat some information about the ASCII out module in Sea-Bird Data Processing. This is one of my favorite Sea-Bird Data Processing modules and is a pretty standard part of my workflow. So let's see, let's just open up from scratch here. I'm gonna save my PSA file. Within Sea-Bird Data Processing, there is click on run, this ASCII out module, number 15. So if you click on that, you'll get this window right here. Looks very similar to the data conversion step. And what this does is it takes in that .cnv converted data file that is kind of hard to read. It's sort of a proprietary Sea-Bird format. As we just saw, your header files are not added to each column. And this ASCII out module allows you to create a file using that converted data that is a lot easier to ingest into something like MATLAB, Python, R, or Excel. And so really what you're going to do here is just select your .cnv file, select your output directory, and then similar if you want to append a name here. So Kim put her initials. I'll put my initials at the end of this. And in the data setup tab, you can select some information of how you want your file to look. So first thing I like to do is select label columns. So this is going to be the headers at the top of each column in your data file. So I'm going to say top of file. That'll put a header at the top. And then I'm going to select my delimiter between data. I like to use something specific like a comma. And so when you select comma, this is effectively going to be a CSV file, comma separated values. Also, if you have time in your CNV file, which I don't remember if I do in this one, you can choose to convert it from a numerical timestamp like Julian days, seconds since like January 1st, 1980 or something, to a more human readable format like month, day, year, hour, minute, seconds. Just make sure you select whatever time format you have in your original CNV file and output it here. So once you do that, click on Start Process. It's going to go through. And let's open this ASC file. And actually, let's go ahead and compare these two files to one another. Okay, so on the left, we have the ASC file that we just created, and on the right, we have the CNV file that we just use to create this ASC file. So on the right, CNV, you have your data here, but it's not super easy to read. Doesn't have a consistent delimiter between columns, and you have your header here. So you can get this into MATLAB or whatever, but it takes a little bit more work. With ASCII out, you have this nice comma separated value here, where each of your columns has a header. So these titles here are actually within the Sea-Bird Data Processing manual. This is temperature, this is conductivity, this is pressure, salinity, and then date and time. And this is your scan number. So this is great. Like, you can really easily take this, like, create a data frame in Python. It's just a little bit easier to pull into another program, whereas your CNV file, you have to kind of massage the data to get it in a format that will work for you. So I highly recommend using ASCII out as just part of your standard workflow if you're using additional data processing outside of the Sea-Bird data processing software.
Greg, it looks like we have, Greg and Kim, we have another question. What is the approximate lifetime of a set of anti-fouling plugs? I typically replace them every deployment, regardless of deployment duration.
Sure. So Kim, maybe you might have a different opinion than me, but I think that's great. Every deployment is, some people don't even do that. It's really hard to approximate the lifetime of your anti-fouling cartridges. It's very dependent on your environment, temperature, amount of biofouling, currents, your sample rate. When people ask us this question, it's almost impossible for us to, like, really get a standard answer there. Kim, do you have any recommendations based on your experience with 37s?
Yeah, I do. So typically they'll last about a year to two. Actually, they'll easily last 2 years depending on your sampling and how much you're pumping. The one good thing, and I was going to look, I think I have one in a. No, I don't actually have them in a drawer. Sorry, but I had a bunch of a comparison of a new antifoulant to an old antifoulant, and the old antifoulant. So the new one, you can see it has material on it. It's typically kind of like a yellowish color. That means your antifoulant is still good. If you look at an old one, it'll be like gray, and you won't see any material on it. And that's a good check for when you can actually, you're going to have to replace it. Oh, good. Thanks, Greg. You have the picture. So even some of the old used ones are also kind of yellowish too, but you can see the clear ones are pretty. You can usually see some of it on the outside of it because it isn't a porous plastic puck. So there's a lot more. It's not just on the outside; it's all embedded into it as well.
I always say that a visual inspection is kind of the best way. Kim showed some pictures of biofouling where you can see a pretty significant amount of growth on the outside of the instrument. But if you look at the intake and the exhaust of your instrument, you'll see that they're totally free of biofouling. If it's still like that, then your cartridges are still working. They're preventing stuff from growing inside of your conductivity cell, inside of your instrument's plumbing. If you can't even see those little holes for the intake and the exhaust, it's probably time to replace these. What I would recommend doing is after each of your deployments, putting on some gloves, putting on some safety glasses, and then in a safe space, pull these out of your instrument and take a look. This one on the left probably has a little bit of life left. It's not quite entirely bleached, and it looks like it's maybe still got some stuff here. This one in the middle, completely toast, and this one is probably just about at the end of its life. A visual inspection like this to see if it seems like there's any of this still saturated inside of the cartridge is the best way to tell if you've got some life left. If after your deployments they're looking like this, it's possible you need to replace them more often. What I would also recommend doing is checking out your minimum conductivity frequency more often. As we mentioned before, or I'm sorry, your zero conductivity frequency. And I guess I closed that file, but Take a look at that 0 value, send a TS command, see what the raw output from your conductivity sensor is telling you. If it's quite a bit different from that 0 conductivity frequency from calibration, say 1 or 2 hertz off, it's possible that you're getting biofouling in your instruments, and these cartridges need to be replaced.
Thanks, Greg. Any other questions? All right, well, we're coming up on 9:30. So I am going to say I think we're done. If you do want to join us next Thursday, well, actually this Thursday, coming up in 2 days, I'll be also talking about SUNAs. So it's a new module for us. Greg mentioned it before. So we're going to actually be talking about using SUNAs for moored applications. So please join us same time, and you can register on the website and get the link. So I don't think anything else you want to add, Greg?
Nope, sounds good. I guess one thing I would say is please fill out the survey that we added into the Q&A. We would really like to know what Sea-Bird University sessions you would like to see in the future. So this year we're trying something new. We're trying to focus on specific products so that people can attend based on the instruments that they're actually using. So let us know what you're using. If you want training on, say, the CFET or the 9+ CTD, anything, just let us know, and we're happy to create Sea-Bird University modules specifically for that application. So please fill out the survey if you've got some time.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, and have a good day, or evening, or night, depending on where you are.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye.